The modern economy depends upon having a highly skilled labor force. If a country improves its schooling, its growth rate will go up. The future can be measured by the quality of its labor force and the quality of its schools.
Hello and welcome to Leadership Dialogues on ET Insights, powered by ET Edge. It is an absolute privilege to introduce one of the most distinguished and visionary minds in the realm of education economics, Dr. Eric Hanushek. Currently the Paul and Jean Hanna Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution of Stanford University, Dr. Hanushek is globally revered for his groundbreaking research that has profoundly shaped the education policy and practice across developed and developing nations. Awarded the prestigious Yadan Prize for Education Research in 2021, Dr. Hanushek's work is a testament to the transformative power of education in driving societal progress. His pioneering contributions have defined how we evaluate teacher effectiveness, introduced value-added measures in educational assessments, and underscored the inextricable link between the skills of a nation and its long-term economic growth. A theme eloquently explored in his seminal work, The Knowledge Capital of Nations, Education, and the Economics of Growth. Today, we have the extraordinary privilege of having Professor Eric Hanushek with us. Thank you, sir, for making time for us.
I'm so pleased to be with you today. I see in India a great potential, and I'd like to help to contribute to that if I could.
I'm sure your knowledge and your body of work will contribute immensely to this discourse, to creating a conversation around how India can skill itself and possibly create a generation of thinkers who will take this to the next level. Professor Hanushek, you've emphasized the importance of education as a key growth driver for any economy. Can you elaborate on how knowledge or how knowledge capital directly influences the long-term growth of a nation, especially in the context of a developing or underdeveloped nation?
I'd be happy to. Um, when we look around the world, we see countries at different stages of development. The most advanced countries have gone from being agriculturally based to manufacturing based, and now more information based. And so the modern economy depends upon having a highly skilled labor force. And this highly skilled labor force does two things. One, it's able to just operate with the normal activities of an economy. But secondly, it has leaders who can, in fact, figure out how to make the economy work better and how to make the country work better also. And that's where education comes in. It feeds both of those aspects of the economy. It feeds a highly qualified labor force, and it feeds the development of new production methods, new ways of doing things that lead to everybody being better off economically.
Right. So, how do you assess the performance of different countries when it comes to investing in human capital? And in your experience, which are the countries which are doing well, which are leading the way?
Well, we take a fairly simple view when we try to compare different economies. And in particular, the kinds of international testing that's done of math and reading abilities and science turn out to be pretty good measures of the overall capacity of the labor force. Starting way back in 1960 with some experimental work, we found that you could give a math test around the world and get a good comparative measure of where the people in different countries were. So the idea is actually pretty simple. Take a math problem, translate it into local language, and march it around the world and see how many people in each country can solve this problem. Well, it turns out that we've been doing that for some time now, in particular the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development in Paris, which is really the club of more developed nations, has been now testing math and science skills around the world for 20, 25 years. And what we get out of that is the ability to rank many countries. I'll add a footnote at this point that I'll come back to. Unfortunately, India has not participated in these testing. We have ways of trying to figure out where India is, but it hasn't participated. If you look at the countries that have done well, there's a lot of East Asian countries, Korea, Japan, China. We think China has not been tested very regularly either, so that a third of the world's population in India and China doesn't have regular testing, and we have to guess at where both nations stand. But if you look at the East Asian countries, take Korea. Korea in 1960 had an average level of education of the adults of 2 years of schooling. It was really backward. Now it has some of the highest completion rates of college in the world, and it leads the world, or is close to leading the world in terms of math and science skills. And what you see is that their economy has gone from being a backward agrarian economy 50 years ago to being one of the leading economies, economically developed countries of the world.
Is there then a direct correlation between the quality of education in a nation and the economic expansion that it's going through?
Absolutely. I believe this. If you take the information on math and science skills from these international tests and compare that to the long run growth rates, I'm not talking about what happens next year, but over a 30, 40, 50-year period, if you look at the growth across nations, you find that the skills of the population as measured by these tests explain almost all the differences in long run growth. And more than that, there's evidence, it's hard to develop, but there's evidence that if a country improves its schooling, its growth rate will go up. So that, in other words, it's a causal relationship that countries that do better will, in fact, in the future succeed. It's not just the other way. It's not that rich countries know more or have better schools. It goes from having good schools to having high growth rates.
I'm very curious, Professor, to understand what have these countries done? What are the interventions that have been taken by them that they're getting these results?
Well, I think that it's hard to have a simple answer to that when you look around the world, because every country basically runs its own education system. They're quite different, and countries with quite different looking education systems do equally as well. I mean, it's not that there's one answer, there are multiple answers.
So can you talk
I
about some
think,
best practices then? Some of the things that have really,
well,
yeah, please go ahead.
I think that directly, some of the things that go on, first, let me say it's not all the schools, that the families have a lot to do with what goes on. And so there's a lot of learning that goes on outside of schools. I've been looking at schools, and I think your question is more that about schools, because that's where we could think of having government policies to improve what's going on. And I think that what we see is that countries that do well emphasize doing well. They have parents that look over the shoulder of their kids and try to see what they're doing. It has countries that, in fact, have their own testing regimes so that they know how they're doing and that they can monitor whether the system is getting better or not. And ultimately, I think in all instances, we have found that the teacher is extraordinarily important. The quality of the teacher matters, and we've seen that across different countries. So it's a combination of things, how you put it together, how you structure your schools, what you set as the curriculum and so forth differs, but you have these fundamental ideas that you pay attention to the performance of the students, what they're getting out of the schools, and you rely upon having high quality teachers, and you measure performance of everybody.
I'm also very keen to understand that apart from the formal education sector, does non formal education have a role to play in these nations as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that um, you know, kids spend a quarter of their day in school, and they spend three-quarters of it someplace else. Now, part of that's sleeping, of course, but there's a lot of other time there where they're learning from parents, they're learning from their peers, they're practicing what they're learning in school in other realms. And so the whole society, in fact, participates in the education of the children. And there are some societies do better than others.
Well, absolutely. So, what would you recommend to nations who are not yet there but aspire to be there and are looking to incorporate education as a very strong pillar in their growth story?
Well, I think that the first thing that has to be done, frankly, is to start measuring performance on a systematic basis, finding out what kids actually know or not. It's really hard. Think of a small business. If it didn't have a profit and loss statement, it would be in trouble. It would not know exactly whether it was doing better this month than last month or last year without some measures of performance. And the same holds for schools. You have to know where the schools and the kids are today in order to know whether you're getting better or worse, and also how does that compare to what's possible. So in the United States, I'll fall back on the United States. We can come to India in a bit, but if I fall back to the United States hasn't done particularly well on these international tests. We get these regular measures, and we're in sort of the middle of the OECD countries, the more developed countries. Um, the U.S. has had this great advantage that we can import well-educated people from abroad. We get highly educated citizens from all the countries of the world. We have next to me in Silicon Valley, where I am, we have a huge concentration of Indian IIT graduates, and you see them all over. We have wonderful Indian food, by the way, because we have so many graduates who come and work in Silicon Valley and do marvelous things.
So that's another advantage of global talent moving to the US. But why has US not done that well? What are the reasons, despite being a developed country?
Well, I think that we have had a problem of really focusing on achievement because things have been working so well in general. We Many people just assume that everything is okay, and you can't assume that. You have to measure performance and pay attention to it. So as I come back, if we talk about development, um, India has never participated in the international test as a nation. There have been a couple states in India that have participated, and frankly, the results haven't been very good. In 2009, a couple Indian states took the international PISA test, and they came out near the bottom of the countries that were taking it. So that while it's obvious that India has some of the best graduates and best schools in the countries, the IITs and the IIMs, at the same time, the mass of people are not getting that same level of education. And over the long run, if that's not corrected, that has to be a drag on the development of your economy.
Mhm. So, what does India need to do so that education really contributes to the growth of the nation?
Well, the first thing, as I say, is to start measuring performance and participate in that. And people are often reluctant, policymakers are reluctant to participate in these tests because they might show that there's a lot of things to be done. But once you're over that, then it's a matter of focusing on it and providing incentives for performance. Um, if you have a school system where large portions of the teachers don't even show up every day, you can't expect the students to be learning at the pace of other countries and the pace that's needed to lead to the development that is appropriate.
All right. So, let me come to another very important topic that's very current, very contemporary, very important is the use of technology in education. And we have AI coming in, we have many other technologies coming in. How can technology aid um, in creating this strong pillar of learning in any nation for that matter?
Well, I think we're just learning more and more about how technology can work effectively. Um, we got a dose of it during the pandemic because there was a requirement to stay out of schools for a while and to use technology. Uh, what we found, and I'm going to give you mainly evidence from the US and developed countries, but what we found was that in-class instruction was on average better than uh, hybrid instruction that had part in-class and part technology. And it was better, both of those were better than completely remote instruction. So we don't have technologies that substitute for schools and teaching and teachers in the normal activities. On the other hand, what we're starting to develop is the ability to first use technology to help individualize instruction. We can use technology to figure out which of the students in the classroom needs what kind of instruction at each point in time. We can have regular uh, information feedback to the system and be able to adjust the schools to individuals. Now, this is a hard thing, and even the best US teachers struggle to sort of adapt to this new kind of world where you can individualize things. But I think that where it's done, we see that that works tremendously well. Now, the whole world is abuzz with what AI
Yeah.
can do for schools, for industry, for everything. And I think the answer is we don't know. we're looking to
Too
see.
early. It's too early now.
Pardon?
I'm saying it's too early, possibly. We have to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, yes. But I think technology is going to become more and more important. On the other hand, people have been saying that for a good 30 or 40 years, talking about TV instruction or computers and so forth. And we haven't yet capitalized on uh, how technology helps for instruction. And so but I think we're getting close to it. The pandemic actually uh, provided incentives for all of the people who live around me in Silicon Valley to suddenly start working on school technology. And we're starting to see some amazing things being developed. Now, whether we can integrate them easily into classroom or not is a matter that will probably take some time.
You also emphasized in your work that quality of teacher education is also very important, or the quality of teachers that you have is also very important for the learning of students. Um, what are your findings from the research that you have done, and how does it contribute to again economic growth?
Well, I think that high quality teachers are essential. We've had a little bit of trouble actually identifying what makes for the most effective teachers.
Mhm.
Teaching is actually a pretty complicated business, and it's very hard to pinpoint exactly what it is about the most effective teachers that distinguishes them from less effective teachers. We know that I guess in some crude sense, smarter teachers are better than dumb teachers, but that doesn't take you very far. It turns out that um, there's such a wide variation in effectiveness in the classroom, how they manage the kids, their interactions with the kids, and what they know. What they know is obviously important. Um, that right now, unless we have some great breakthrough in research, my own view is that the best way to deal with this is to evaluate teachers after they've been in the classroom. Once they've been in the classroom, I think you and I could walk into almost any school in the world and tell you whether the teacher is doing a good job or not. It's just pretty apparent with a little bit of observations.
Mm.
Now, how you actually capitalize on that information is a tricky problem because these are complicated labor markets and they involve um, teachers unions that are trying to protect the rights and benefits of teachers. They involve parents that have strong opinions about the quality of their schools and so forth. So here it takes real leadership from school personnel, from the political leadership and the community leadership to get us to have a core of really top teachers that are there all the time, that are helping the kids. And there's no easy answer. We could walk in and say, we only want effective teachers here, but there's quite a distance between that and being able to actually have effective teachers in all of our classrooms.
All right, so let me come to this very important conversation on addressing education inequalities in the world. How do you ensure that knowledge capital is evenly distributed, equitably distributed? How do you address that?
Well, I think that's a matter of societal judgments. It's a little bit hard to think about this if you say it in the world and you want me to compare knowledge gaps in the U.S. and India.
Mm.
I think that from my opinion, there's one rule that holds about schools in the world, and that is nobody can come in from outside and tell somebody how to run their schools. And so if I came into Delhi and started barking orders to schools about how it, or not barking orders, just telling them this is the way you should be doing it, I think there'll be very little take up. It's very hard for people outside to come in. So this really has to, I believe, begin at the level of the communities and the societies that are involved. Now, it's clear that um, many developing countries spend um, a pitiful amount on their schools. They pay little attention to it. That leads, in fact, to not many people wanting to be teachers in many places. They want to go someplace else or some other job. And so there's a need for resources. And I think that, um, there is some effort to provide funds to developing countries, the World Bank and other institutions that help provide funds. But that's much less important, frankly, than getting the community's interest in fact, supporting their students. Now, if I had to say, that, for example, one difference of why East Asian countries tend to be at the top of the world rankings on education, it's in part because the societies have taken the position that educating kids is the primary job of families, and the society has to help in that. And so it's a community action that has, I think, led to having effective schools in Korea and Japan and in China. Um, and that's something that's hard to get to because that takes real political leadership. This is where the political leadership is more important and probably more important than the resources. The resources would help, but providing the initial political leadership to lead the country to see that the future depends upon the quality of schools. That's the first thing that has to be done.
Right. So it's political will, it's collective effort from the community that's going to drive change. Finally, Professor, um, how do you see the future of education evolving um, and contributing to greater economic growth?
Well, I think that the future of every country, the long run future, can be measured by the quality of its labor force and the quality of its schools. And in countries that see that and evolve in that way will, in fact, reap the rewards, the development, economic rewards, and I think also the political rewards. An educated population helps having well-run societies. Um, and this all fits together. Countries that don't see that are going to fall behind. And so there's an actual uh, possibility that we have expanding disparities around the world as we have countries that don't see the importance of education falling farther and farther behind those that in fact do.
On that wonderful note, Professor, that the writing on the wall is very clear. Either you act and create systems, processes that will help you grow, or you lag behind. Um, it merits a larger conversation, of course, but thank you for your time. And it was such a delight to talk to you and learn so much about not only your body of work, but the possibilities that lie ahead for nations to leverage education. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, and I hope to continue this discussion with you.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much.